Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you once again to go back over all of the action in the British Basketball League. This week we'll start, of course, with the Euro Cup game on Tuesday night, where the London Lions beat Promitheas Patras 77-67 in Greece. There was no Joe Young, which is a sizable omission from Patras's lineup. He's averaging 24.5 points per game this season, which is a ridiculous number in Euro Cup play, second in index rating. Oni was listed for the Lions, but didn't play, and we've since learned that he's going to be out for a little while with a hand injury. But Lions basically did what they had to do early on. They scored 11 in a row, two urban threes late in the first quarter, and got up 10 points early on.
Yeah, they just looked better, didn't they? Firstly, before we even get to that, I'm continually befuddled by the financial economy of the Euro Cup.
Yeah.
Every time we watch an away game, there's no bugger there.
Yeah, it depends.
Well, it wasn't Hamburg.
It depends on where you go, and there was in Tel Aviv as well.
Yeah, it's different.
But I mean, the economics of European basketball in general are quite interesting, I think.
No, it does. We've always had this impression, it's kind of been foisted on us by people who claim to know that every game in Europe has got 11,000 screaming fans and flares.
I don't know if you saw the Belgrade derby in the EuroLeague.
I saw the shot that won it.
Those are the pictures that goes out as the sort of norm, and it's fairly normal in Belgrade, to be fair. But it's not consistent. Europe is not a homogenous place where everybody has crazy fans jumping up and down, waving flags and lighting pyrotechnics.
Yeah, I love that. Whenever we hear about we need European culture, which one of the four?
Yeah. Because actually, France is a bit more like us, if I'm honest with you. It's a bit more Americanized when I've done French games.
Yeah. So that was the first thought. As ever, there's no one there. Secondly, I thought they were really good. They kind of they know, you can tell that they know that they belong in that competition. You can tell that they have a degree of confidence.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's more than that. I think it's that they know they're good now in that competition.
That's kind of what I mean. Yeah, but you're right, and therefore they have that degree of kind of confidence in that they can play through what they need to play through. They seem to have belief in the staff, in the coaching. You don't see much in the way of dissent or of disappointment or anything like that. The very little I remember about the game, because I did watch it, but I have to say I watched it kind of fast forwarding some of the bits. But the little I remember about the game came down to the end, and the rookie Greek coach getting himself thrown out.
Let's spin forward to that then, because they got up double figures, and then Arnaldus Kulbolka hit a couple of threes to cut it back to a 1 point game. Still a 1 point game with 6:22 to go, and then Lions reeled off 12 of the next 15 points. And as you say, was it his second game in charge? I think it was. And he's DQ'd out of the building, which again you don't see often, but it's always entertaining. Even better,
he was DQ'd out of the building for protesting a foul, which then wasn't called.
Yeah.
The Java tried to dunk the ball, and there was a whistle somewhere. Bench goes ballistic, coach gets kicked out, and when you come back, it's a jump ball. So I thought that was relatively entertaining. It was entertaining because we don't see enough of it here anymore. There's not enough coaches getting thrown out anymore.
I think Atiba's the only one I can think of recently. Rob got thrown out of a game at London 2 or 3 years ago. Atiba's the only one recently I can remember.
March 2015. Only coaching 9 games. I got thrown out one. At Worcester. Never mind. I thought there's a danger that we get to the point in where we have so many games and everybody's so familiar with each other that there's a little bit of edge, which is kind of which is kind of lost, which I always enjoyed. I thought it was a rough edge of the BBL, but I always thought it was fun. You know that you know ultimately people could go off on one. You know, Finch used to go off on one. Nurse must have been kicked out of multiple games. Donald, in particular.
Donald, yeah.
You know, obviously Fab threw a clipboard across the court.
Yeah.
You had
Donald actually. I've commentated on him getting kicked out twice, and I'm just thinking, how many games would I have done on TV with him coaching? And I managed to get commentated twice where he got ejected.
Bob Donald Jr. For those who don't know, Google him.
Yeah, there's plenty out there. Put China in as well. You'll get a great video as well.
China in the Olympics.
Yeah.
The only team we beat by 30. Kieran Chara remembers that game.
Yeah.
We let him play, and he actually was quite good. So not. But I thought London kind of broke it open down the stretch. You know, Best made a couple of plays, and basically what we saw again, the only Achilles heel I have in relation to these high-level European teams is defending the 3-point line, because they're not defending it to the same. They haven't defended it to a higher degree than they do during the week in the BBL. So yes, it was Kulboka in this game who made some shots, and and they're all catch and shoot shots, and that's that's the team that's going to kind of, if they're going to go down, they're going to go down in a barrage of threes. I think. Also, they've got a European rotation now, and there was very few minutes for the kind of 10, 11, 12 English guys on the bench. It was very much this is the group that we're going with, and this is a group we need to get wins. So, but I think they made a couple of big shots down the end, and the coach it's the vibe, isn't it? You see, basically, as soon as the coach gets thrown out with 3 minutes to go, and players will never accept this, but at that point, it is beg your pardon. At that point, the players' mentality as well. If we lose, it's not my fault. You know, I will never not believe that. You know, particularly when you get up to that kind of higher level stuff. You know, it's like the players can look around and think, oh, it only takes 3 plays. They only have to be knocked off track for 3 plays, and it's 8-point run. The game's done. I thought that's what happened. I thought suddenly they started looking around a bit, turned down a couple of shots. As I said, I remember Best making a big shot in the corner. And
so they'd got it back. That was, I think, the one you're thinking of is they got it back to 66-71 with 1:33 to go, and Decker hit a 3, and then Best hit a 3, and it's 11 points with 50 seconds to go.
Yeah, and Decker is, and they won this game without Zubcic hitting anything. Which was, if you're winning by 10 on the road in Greece, and you start on 4-man base, you can't make a shot, and you're winning comfortably, you're doing something really well. So I'm still quarterfinals for them. I really am. I think in a 2-legged game against
it's a 1-leg game. It's a one-off game.
A one-off game against. They scout it properly, and unless they get, as I said, destroyed in a battle of threes, and I think they should win. It's also interesting because obviously we'll get to it. We may as well get to it now because they announced it during the week. The new guy that they've signed,
Jordan Taylor.
Now, I know little about him. You know a lot about him. But I did Google his resume. It's pretty impressive.
Pretty good, isn't it? He's been playing at Eurocup, Euroleague level for a long time.
So he knows his way around. And he's a ball handler, which is probably the one area that we've told them that they should look to improve on. And the reason that struck me as really interesting was because, it comes back down to the economic case for all of this, right? I can't be curmudgeonly in any way in relation to, I'm enjoying watching these guys play. They're taking things properly. There's nothing amateurish about the way that they're handling their business, either on or off the court. There's nothing unprofessional. There's no showboating. There's no look at us. It's just really, really impressive the way that they're doing everything. I still don't see any way that the economics of it adds up unless they get into the EuroLeague. Right? The only way they're getting into the EuroLeague is if they win the Eurocup. Maybe in the next year or two. I'm not they'll never get into the EuroLeague, but I don't think anyone's going to be offering them a place in the EuroLeague next year.
Presumably, I mean, you never know with how everything works, but presumably the EuroLeague would want to see a little bit of consistent. This is what London are. They want to see this team for 3 or 4 years before they said, okay, you can come in. But as you say, if you win the Eurocup, you're in. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. So that's automatic qualification. It just struck me with, with the roster upgrades that they've made in relation to Oni and Taylor, neither of whom will have come cheap at all. And we're not talking tens of thousands here, you know. It's probably a bit upwards of that. Now I'm just wondering if their kind of business plan is kind of now, no, you know, we know, you know, we can get massive exposure in the EuroLeague. No, I don't imagine any of the EuroLeague games are with nobody there. I haven't watched enough of them, but I watched the Real Madrid game on Thursday night, and that was a decent game as well. I wish I could talk about that in the 4.3 seconds ago when you're down 4. After last week, I'd said you can't lose from that situation. Unless you've got Eddie Patras playing for you. So I just thought maybe that's it. Maybe, you know, it's all in. It's all win. We're actually going to get a spot in the EuroLeague.
The obvious challenge would be, though, for that is where they play, because presumably the O2 is the only viable venue in London that they could play in, and then can you get that 18 times a year? Don't know. That's
7,000 not enough.
I had in my head it was 10, but I could be wrong on that. I could be. Maybe the copper box is big enough. I'd have to check it.
We know politicians can make excuses. And
that's true.
That's true. Anything, can't they? In basketball competitions in particular. But no, it was just interesting. The fact that, as I say, that, you know, that's a signing of intent.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm thinking, well, what is your intent? And I'm looking at everything that's being spent, and obviously there is no real return on it at this point in time. But one could argue that, you know, there would be potentially in the EuroLeague if you're playing Panathinaikos and FS and Real Madrid. Arsenal that every week, that becomes news. And at the moment, it's not really news. You know, Gran Canaria, Patras, you know, Slask. You know, that's not going to kind of burrow you into the basketball press consciousness of a football mad country, you know. So I wonder if they're just going to go absolute nuclear, which would be really good.
And as you say, even the football market will know most of the teams because they're football teams as well.
Yeah, goodness knows where the exactly. Yeah,
you know, you've got Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Olympiacos, Panathinaikos. All of these teams have football teams as well.
Yeah, I know, and fairly decent population supporters in the London area.
Yeah. I would imagine Žalgiris would be a hot ticket in London.
Exactly. I remember Pauker, Crowtree, they're just Sunderland. You know, that was different than the basketball experience I've had. So I can see that being the way forward. So, you know, let's see where they get to. If it happens, we called it here first.
Indeed, yeah.
So we never mentioned it.
Kulboka led the way with 18 points. Trevor Simpson had 16. Decker, 9 of 13 shooting, 20 points and 6 rebounds. Huban 14, best 13. So let's move to the BBL game that was on Wednesday night. And that was Plymouth City Patriots 68, Sheffield Sharks 63. Simons was back. Nelson and Cook were out for Sheffield. I was actually doing a Euro Cup game on Wednesday night, but it was the early game, so I managed to watch the last couple of minutes of this in real time. But I watched the rest of the game back, and just a bit of learning made me think of you, Dave, because a bit of learning is you can speed the playback up a little bit if you go on the little cog. And if you watch Sheffield at 1.75 speed, they almost look like Manchester the way they move up and down the court.
I like it.
That's the right window.
That could be a really interesting stat, that, couldn't it? You know, if you watch a certain team at a certain speed, how long do their possessions take to what speed, at what high speed do they have to go on to have their possession take the same?
My take was 175 for Sheffield is a good way of getting them to
probably say that would be an outlier. You know? Sheffield missing a couple of players. Cook wasn't playing, and obviously Nelson's still hurt. Plymouth, you know, what we're learning about this league is that you got to win at home. You got to win your home games. You know, bottom line, you got to win your home games, and you're expected to win your home games. And Plymouth on a Wednesday night isn't the easiest trip, obviously. And Plymouth are very comfortable playing on their home court now. You know, they're getting kind of that Bristol thing going, I think. So you've got all of that going on, and I think the commentator said at some point it was kind of being played at Sheffield pace, but I didn't think it was. I thought it was just being played not particularly well. I thought both teams were going a little bit faster than Sheffield wanted them to, but no one could score. So I thought that the execution wasn't great early on, and I thought Sheffield's issue wasn't that they weren't getting the ball at the court; it's that they were turning down looks and that they were being too careful in the way they were sharing. The ball was moving too much. I thought they needed to be more direct because they were ending up with one shot and they weren't really attacking Plymouth down the gut, which is probably where they're weakest, to be honest. So they really didn't get much going offensively in the first half at all, apart from probably Oganyemi. Delpesh helped them a little. Delpesh started, but Oganyemi was the one who was really helping them inside. And the only guy in the whole game who was really able to score with regularity inside. He didn't play as much as I thought he might have. And Sheffield really, again, struggled for creativity without Nelson because he is their off the dribble guy. And that means that Banks has to do a bit more, Rutino has to do a bit more, Glasgow has to do a bit more. And, that's not easily going to be sustainable because it takes them out of what their natural skill sets are. So I think my thought at half time was Sheffield have to play faster, but what I mean by faster is you have to go earlier on the shot clock. And actually in the second half, I thought they did.
So just run quickly through the first half for people who haven't seen it. Hassan and Dusha put them out to an 11-6 lead. Oganyemi had 7 in an 11-0 run to put Sheffield in front. 10 points in a row for Plymouth, had them back ahead, and then Williams and Brandon with the threes early in the second half. They stretched what was a small lead into a 13-point lead, and then end of the third quarter, Banks with 5 points in a 9-0 run gets it back down to a 2-point game and sets it up for a tight fourth quarter.
Yeah, well, Sheffield are very much built not to break. They bend, don't break. And you're right. Early in the third quarter, Plymouth looked like they might be trying to break them because Plymouth are an explosive team offensively. Williams in particular. You add in when Dusha, which he's been doing all season, are making threes, and when Brandon is making threes, which he's doing to a reasonable clip now, whereby you really got to guard him. Then that just allows Simons and Hawthorne just to not Simons, Bell and Hawthorne just to create havoc, with their energy, and then Hassan cleans up anything else. So they are a team who can explode and particularly can get you on the break with Bell flying around, Hawthorne flying around, and Williams pushing the ball. But Sheffield managed to keep them away from that. And again, it was, as you say, Banks made a couple of shots, and they also attacked quicker. So I think at one point in the third quarter, I noted that they had like 25 points in the first half or something, and they'd scored nearly as many in the third quarter as they had in the first half. And that was because the speed they were going, and they were getting to the rim quicker. And the one thing that you can do with Plymouth is you can space them out and you can get to the rim on them because they don't really have a rim protector. Bell is a little bit of a rim protector, but he's a bit young. He jumps around all over the place, and often he's guarding the perimeter. Hassan tries, but Hassan's primary skill set has always been offense, not defense. I'm sure even he would accept that. He does what he can, but he's undersized. He's 6'6", and I thought when Sheffield started really forcing the ball down there early in relation to screen and rolls, cleaning out one side of the court and getting cutters, and running the screen and roll on one side and then rotating the ball to the other side, and then Rutino started attacking the rim. The kind of the motion of the game was in their favour. At that point, but you have to be able to score in the fourth quarter to win. This is another maxim that's on its way. You don't necessarily win in the fourth. If you're in a close game on the road, it's not about your defense, it's actually about your offense. You have to be able to keep scoring the ball, and you can't get yourself into a situation where you have multiple kind of wasted possessions where you're not getting good looks and you're not getting into your stuff. And because what happens then, the opposition run off it, and that's how it's different at home. You can sustain it on your defense at home, but on the road you have to keep scoring. You have to keep knocking the wind out of the crowd. You have to keep taking the wind out of the other team, and they couldn't quite do that.
So let's get it to the last couple of minutes then. Yeah. Banks with a tough finish, 62-61, 2 minutes to play. Bell on the next play, 138, had an open three and then had to think about it. And I was thinking, oh, just shoot it. But it went in. It went in. 65-61. Nichols come. Yeah. Go on.
For him, big shot. He wasn't brought into threes, and to step up and make that shot when it mattered. That's cojones. That's good.
Nichols cuts it to 2, 65-63 with a mid-range shot. Williams then misses a contested mid-range. And then with 30 seconds to go, Nichols with a tough 14-foot shot, but Hassan did a really good job to beat Delpesh to the rebound, I thought. And then there was about a 6.5 second differential between shot and game clock in this one. And obviously it's a 2-point game, so there's that debate of whether you foul them. I know you're in the play defense, but I think you're a 7-second guy, aren't you? And this was 6.
Yeah, 6 to 7 seconds. I think I'm certainly 6 seconds. I'm wavering.
Yeah.
Oh crap! What do
So
we
Sheffield started playing defense at first,
Yeah,
and then Banks commits a foul at midcourt, and because of the way the cameras cut, you couldn't really tell, but the commentators did say that Atiba had called for it, and it was just sort of weird. They waited 11 seconds to commit the foul, and it was the team's 4th foul, so there were no free throws. So it's 19 seconds left. I guess you still got 14 on the shot clock because it's in the front
but
court.
you lose a second, don't you? If you're not going to foul, 6 goes to 5.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes it's a bit chaotic down there. It's dark. Noise going on. Sometimes, and we've seen. I mean, poor Banks tried to miss a foul shot last week. He should have made it. Getting messages across to your players at that time, you can't. But particularly when you don't really know the players, you've only coached for 10 or 12 games. Sometimes it's very difficult to say don't foul. It's easy to foul. Don't foul, because they're all looking like, what do we do? No one wants to come, So I wouldn't, I mean, extending the game is never bad.
Yeah.
If you extend the game, that's not a big problem. But as you say, I always took the view that once we get into the foul situation, we're probably going to lose.
Yeah.
Lose, but we're probably going to lose.
Yeah.
When you were ahead of the game, you were always looking to get ourselves into the situation where they had to foul.
Yeah.
Whether you're up 8 with a minute to go, whether you're up 5 with 30 seconds to go, you want to get to that position where there is not enough possessions for them to win the game. And at that point, it's just a matter of managing who's in the game, making sure you got your foul shooters in the game. And then it's down to the players. And as a coach, at that point, you think, well, it's not my problem. Players have to make foul shots, Can't do any better than that.
So Banks fouls Stusha with 17.3 seconds to go. He goes 1 for 2. So it's 66-63. Timeout, advance the ball. Ritino down the lane. Then it gets thrown inside he went down the lane. I couldn't read my own script there. Down the lane, came back up, threw it inside to Oganyemi, but Hassan did a good job of slowing him down. Bell then comes with the help and blocks the shot. Glasgow gets the rebound. He takes a contested elbow shot. That misses. Oganyemi gets the offensive rebound. He misses that. A tip from Ritino doesn't go in. And finally, Bell gets the rebound with about 2 seconds left. Is fouled and makes a couple of free throws. The
problem is that without Nelson, who's had the ball in his hands virtually the end of every game this season, Sheffield are not a team that's made to score quick points in all those circumstances. They don't have anybody, I think, with that absolute first step who's going to create a disadvantage on the opposition, and that really matters down the end because it's very difficult to create a good shot. And with 15 seconds to go, whatever, you want the quick 2 really. You're down 3, you want the quick 2 extend the game, because unless you can get an absolute nailed on 3, which it's unlikely, a 3-point shot miss ends the game. If you can get to the rim in 4 seconds, then I'm going to make some more foul shots, please.
Which was the play they drew up to go to Oganyemi,
but again they didn't. But that's the problem. When you're throwing the ball inside in that situation, which is he was their best player and he's the highest level player, so I absolutely understand it. But by definition, it takes up more time and it's easier to blow up. If you're a defender, you can blow up that play. Because whereas if you put 5 guys on the foul line, on the 3-point line, then someone's just going to tap the rim, and then if you ever see quick 2s, it's normally someone going in for an uncontested lay because the other team scored out on the 3-point line. By putting a guy in the post and saying let's go and score, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. You got to get the inside pass right, you got to get the spacing right, you've got to hope they don't double. It's just very difficult, and they just weren't quite set up for that. But one thing that struck me about this game, Ritino, I think, is my vote at the moment for the best conditioned player in the league, because he just never stopped. Shot the ball like twice in the game or something ridiculous, but he was up, down, round, moving, playing defense, physically everywhere. Played all 40 minutes. I thought he was awesome in this game without actually standing out. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Outside of that, Plymouth are just kind of on a roll with the group that they've got. As I say, they're probably at this point in time top 5 team. I think. Let's see how they do on the road. I think that said, they're probably 2 injuries from disaster because they're not deep. But you keep playing until you get them.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have a joie de vivre about them.
They do, yes.
About the way they jump up and down a
lot.
A moxie, and it's becoming a little bit more controlled.
Yeah.
In fact, and we'll talk about a little bit more in today's game as well. They're getting to that point now whereby they can win without playing great.
Yeah.
And that's big. Yeah. Because in the past when they weren't playing great, I say in the past, those guys, that group at the end of last year and this year, if they weren't playing great, it could blow up.
Yeah.
You get the impression now that they're a little bit more mature as a team. It's a good win.
Williams with 20 points and 5 rebounds. Hassan 6 of 7 shooting for 13 points and 8 rebounds. Dusha 12. Oganyemi 14 points and 5 rebounds. Delpesh 6 of 8 shooting for 13 points. Banks had 11. Sheffield with 39% from field goal, 26% from 3-point, and 61% from the free throw line. Tough to win.
It's tough to win. I would guess that they also had more points in the paint than Plymouth, which is remarkable.
Yeah. And at that point, half the league was 500.
Which I know you want. Well, actually, what you're saying is 50% of the league was 500. So 500 of the league was 500.
Yeah, 500 if I read my tweet.
I did. I tried to miss them, but they keep on my timeline. I need to do something about that. Where's Elon when you need him? I needed some right-wing race baiting stuff instead of your basketball tweet-related rubbish.
Let's move to Friday night and something that hadn't happened for a whole week, a Bristol Flyers home game. Bristol Flyers.
This is just moving into the elements of conspiracy now, isn't it?
Well, I'm starting to think they're not playing away games at all.
I mean, I just think there's something going on here. I think there's gonna be a rule put in at Christmas that everyone's got to replay the same fixtures all over again. Just like an end of 32 home games or something. It's just it's beginning to get a little bit disconcerting.
So Bristol Flyers 78, Surrey Scorchers 60. No Miller for Bristol after that ankle injury. So Watson Gale was into the starting lineup, only the second time he started this season. And Jefferson got his first start. For Surrey, it was pretty tight first half. Bristol led by 6, Surrey led by 3, but there wasn't really much either way.
Pretty tight insofar as there's lots of missed shots.
Yeah. But that allows for lots more offensive rebounds, and that's how you win the game.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, I understand why Watson Gale started. I'm not sure that's. I'm not sure he's the starting point guard in this league at this point in time. I think he's an off the bench scoring guard. I thought they didn't quite get into their stuff in the same way that they had done when Miller was on the court. Obviously, I think Miller and Bell played together at college as well. So, there's a synergy there in relation to that, which isn't quite there with Watson Gale. But for Watson Gale's development, he's going to have to be a starting point guard. So he's got to start at some point. I was kind of a little bit surprised that Samuels didn't start, but he obviously likes Samuels' energy off the bench as opposed to Watson Gale scoring off the bench. So it's probably a 50-50 shot. Surrey, Jefferson is obviously Lawrence is back as well. But Jefferson is, as you see, he's kind of your archetypal undersized 2 scoring guard guy who can shoot it from anywhere and can score if you give him the basketball. They have too many players. I'm sorry, and the other Newcastle we'll get to in a minute. They have too many players as well. At the moment, it's a balance for the coach to get the best out of the team that he's got, because he's got to figure out who it is that is not going to be playing as much. And if players don't mind not playing if they're playing for a winning team. At the minute, for a losing team and they're not playing, then that becomes very difficult to kind of retain their kind of the enthusiasm, the effervescence that you need to get performances out of them. So you've got to fight. He's got Lawrence. He's got obviously Quincy Taylor, who's a 30-minute-a-game guy, got a new guard in Jefferson, so Bazumbu's kind of disappeared. You've got Wang, but you've also got Carey. So Carey's kind of disappeared a little bit, and then you've got to find minutes, and you've got minutes at front for kind of Johnson and Martin and Jack Donnelly, and then you've got the other guys to come back when Josh Steele comes back and when Tato comes back as well. So that's a tough job. You need to win now, so you need players, but you also need to try and make sure they're comfortable in their role. And their issue, I thought, again, offensively, what you tend to find, and this is probably a generalization, but at the beginning of a season, a coach is generally going to be trying to put his stuff in. Put in your offense. This is what I want us to run. This is the stuff I want to run. And as the season goes on, the players get more and more comfortable with each other. So it becomes less structured because players start playing off reads with each other, and they start getting the ball down, getting the ball to where it needs to be a little bit earlier, and they take out some of the actions that the coach has got them running at the beginning of the season to kind of, share the ball and make everybody feel good and all the come by our stuff, So they get rid of all that stuff. Now, I think 8 teams in the league are at that point. And I think the 2 that aren't are the 2 at the bottom.
Yeah.
Because the Surrey guys are still kind of figuring out, where each of the spots are. When can we go? When can we attack? Do we have to set 3 screens every time we go down? Does the ball have to see both sides every time? Can we not just throw it in here? Does every basket have to be a quote marks a perfect basket? And they're all wanting to do what the coach wants, and that's understandable. But they don't want to make mistakes, right? Now I'm sure Lloyd will want them to go. Lloyd will want them to attack because Lloyd had Tyreek Armstrong last year, if you remember. Tyreek, there was dropped 40 on Newcastle at the arena without passing the ball. Didn't need to, Attack.
The other correlation between those 2 teams is they probably had the most variation in lineups over the course.
Yeah, and absolutely. So what I'm saying is that they've still got new players, and you've got to look at how many games each player has played. Right, and how so even then we think that Trinity Taylor's been there a while. He's played 5 games. Ryan Martin's played 5 games. Jefferson comes in, he's another new piece. He's played 3 games. Andrew Lawrence has played 2 games. Right, so they're all having to figure out everything on the fly against a team like Bristol, who's been doing whatever it. That was Surrey's offensive issues. I thought at times they were. I missed out Dobbs as well, so that's 10 players, that's their offensive issues. They do move the ball. They have got guys who can score, but you probably, whenever I was looking at our roster, our lineup, you would always have in your mind kind of the perfect shot distribution for your team. So I want him shooting the ball this amount in a perfect world. I want this guy shooting the ball, not a number, but kind of a ratio. Right. So my example, obviously, I don't want Fab shooting the ball 3 times as much as Charles.
No.
That's a very basic one, obviously. But you do that all the way across your roster. So what kind of shot distribution do I want? Who are my most efficient scorers? How do I get the ball into their hands? Where do we go when we need a basket? That type of thing. And at the moment, I don't know if Surrey know that. Yeah, and I don't think they can know that because they've got so many pieces moving on. Bristol's shot distribution is basically just whoever's got the ball can shoot the ball. And I thought this game changed on the fact that Bristol were freer. What I mean by that is, it was a relatively close game.
Yeah.
But then you have Mahan and Ollison and Watson Gale, who, if nobody's in front of them on the fast break, 5 seconds into the shot clock, and I say a fast break, I mean a secondary fast break, where so the defense is there, right? But if nobody's right up in front of them, they're just going to take one dribble and they're going to shoot it. And they made 3 or 4 threes, which broke the game open, which didn't come out of any pretty offense. It just came out of players stepping into a shot that they were comfortable taking.
Yeah.
And I don't think Surrey are at that point yet. And in the BBL, that matters.
It does, yeah. So Bell and Ollison hit a couple of threes to make it 11 midway through the 3rd quarter. It was still only 8 points in the 4th quarter, but Bristol, this is the bit you're talking about now, scored 13 points in a row and just sort of like cruised home. Watching this game, it didn't look like it was going to be an 18-point game at the end of it.
Well, Surrey basically missed a layup every which way you could for the last 7 minutes of the game. They got decent shots, but no one could finish. No one could come close to finish. Johnson missed 3 or 4, and they were gimmies. and I was watching it actually, and I was, after the first couple, and this is where the coach has difficult decisions to make because he has a kind of a overwhelming number of imperfect options.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of, right, this is all I've got, this is what we're going with. He's got all these things going on as to what he does. I was thinking you need, because you got nothing out of Jack Domi in the game. Johnson, couldn't make a 2-foot shot at the end, and there was multiple misses. And I was thinking, well, he's going to have to come back with, and I think he's going to have to come back with Martin as a 5, because Martin was playing the 4. Now, if you're not getting anything out of your 2 centres, I was waiting for the moment that, he slips Martin to the 5, bring another guard on, sprays the court out, and at least try and find a way of scoring. But against that, he's probably thinking, well, we're getting layups. I can't
yeah.
What more?
It's working.
More,
they're just not putting it in.
They just can't finish. And that's when it comes down to kind of the process against the fact that it's a mad game played by extremely temperamental athletes who can be the very best thing in the world one day, and the next day can't throw the ball in the ocean from a foot. And the underestimated part of the coaching thing, and there's never a right way and a wrong way, so I'm not saying Lloyd got this wrong, I'm not at all. But the underestimated part is kind of figuring out who can you have on when it matters, who is not necessarily going to do the right thing, but who is making plays. Who's going to make a play? It can be the wrong thing, but if they're making plays, ultimately you live with it, because that's what you're dealing with. And I don't think they did that. I don't think I thought they kind of went out meekly in this game.
They did.
And they looked, as I say, it was a little bit dispiriting near the end, I thought. You got to score more than 60. And when you're playing them, these are BBL games. These are not games whereby every possession is being fought for. There are shots going up. The speed of the game is high, and you've got to score more than 60. Whatever you're going to tell us the numbers now, but I bet the percentages weren't great.
They weren't. No, I will get to that in a second. Bell with 19 points and 7 rebounds. Delpesh 15 points, 12 rebounds, 10 offensive rebounds. That's the second time this.
That's exactly probably why Lloyd's thinking I need to play with a centre, because Delpesh is on the board.
Yeah.
But my comeback to that is, if you're already playing with a centre and he's killing you on the board,
how's it going to?
You may as well go smaller and and try and screw them up, as opposed to them hammering you at what they're good at.
He's second time this season he's got 10 offensive rebounds. He's the first player since Willie Clayton to do it twice in a season.
I'm still scared of Willie.
Willie Clayton did it 7 times, so he's got a long way to go.
Willie, I have to say, was the most. He was one of the few guys in all my time in the BBL that I could actually say physically created fear.
Yeah.
Not because he was mad, not because he was going to hit you or anything like that, but with the level, the ferocity with which he played. I mean, if you ever got to see that early, he did a warm-up game, which made you think that he was about to join the Marines.
And then he would play 38 minutes, and he would be going after the offensive rebound with the same ferocity in the 40th minute.
The story with Willie is that Willie actually, and Willie actually broke. He was actually the first person to break a very specific rule at the Eagles Community Arena, which is that other than guide dogs, no dogs are allowed.
Oh, you allowed his dog in the arena, did you?
Well, I think he sneaked it in.
Okay.
His bag. Because Willie had a dog that he used to take everywhere with him, and including the away games. And I remember before one of our games, one of the games that we played whereby I think he routinely destroyed us. There was some kerfuffle out the front about where the dog could come in or not, and then the last thing we were all, well, don't annoy him. Don't make him any worse. You have an elephant in if you want. It makes him happy. But no, Willie Clayton, he was something special. Signed a guy like him the year later. Actually, signed a guy called John Mitchell a year later who did the warm ups the same as Willie, but wasn't quite the same on the court.
No. Watson, Gale, King, and Mahan all had 11. Martin led the Scorchers with 15 points and 8 rebounds. Jefferson 13, Johnson 11. 21 of 71 field goal shooting, 29% from the floor, 22% from 3-point range.
And the other thing is, sometimes you've just got guys who can put the ball in the basket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go to the Sky Sports game. Leicester Riders 100, Caledonia Gladiators 67. No Washington for Leicester. Caledonia led 11-6, but then 2 3-pointers in 8 in a row from Whelan put Leicester in front. Tell you the thing that caught my eye, I don't know if it was on camera or not, was when Whelan made the first 3, and it'd been reasonably well contested. He sort of turned to the crowd and arms out, and and I've seen Whelan do that a load. Most of the time he does it later in the game than that. It's like after the second or third 3-pointer. And it was at that point I thought, wow, this guy is ready for this game. He is ready for this game.
Schwarzenegger game, wasn't it? I'll be back.
Yeah.
They've been, I'd say I wouldn't say embarrassed, but if because other teams lose like that all the time. But from a Leicester perspective, that game at Caledonia was embarrassing for them. It was so far away from their normal manner of playing. So, in many ways, I think it was slightly fortunate for Caledonia that there was a league game before the Cup semi-final.
Yeah.
To get that routine shellacking out of the way. And there's a couple of interesting things. I mean, just on Caledonia at the moment, I mean, and there's some interesting stuff going on because obviously Burns is coming and is shooting the ball every time he touches it. You have Bailey, who is becoming kind of their litmus test, their vocal leader, their kind of everything. When it really, I think it should be Onwas, but Onwas is your strong silent type, right? So Bailey in this game was ultra hyped for this game and not ready at all. Right, because he shot the ball 4 times in the first 2 minutes. He then committed 2 ridiculous fouls. One 45 feet from the basket, the other a swipe down, just ridiculous, which sat him on the bench for most of the first half. He then comes back and commits a 3rd foul, I think, on Loving going to his right where he didn't guard him properly. And he sat down again. And then eventually in the second half, he gets a 4th foul and fouls out on a technical, which is an absolute, I mean, it's the archetypal BBL rookie not ready for the game kind of situation. Spiral, just a total spiral. Everything from the first foul, from the missed shots to the second foul, to the dumb foul when you come back in, to getting frustrated on the 4th foul, which was also a foul, and getting a technical on the way out. It's like the trifecta. You've done it all, right? But he's the captain, right? So. In theory, and in many ways, you prefer an abundance of energy than a deficit of energy. So it's not all bad, right? So there's that going on. Despite the fact that he sat down for most of the first half, Caledonia continued to kind of be effective, and they were scoring comfortably. Burns came in, jacked up a few, missed a few, but eventually came back in and started making a few. But what then happened was an absolute carbon copy of the Newcastle Cup game the week before, because just before they got to half time, Gareth overestimated his bench, which is a situation which I think coaches do at times when they're trying to manage the game. And there is, you can't manage a game at Leicester. Leicester don't lose at home very often, right? You'll have the numbers, but they don't.
That was the 20th home win in a row.
There you go. Right, you cannot manage the game against them. You cannot say, "Oh, keep him ready for the 4th quarter," because the 4th quarter won't be there, right? And you have to be kicking, scratching, clawing, and your best guys have to be on the court. And if they're going to foul out early, well, you're going to lose in the 4th quarter because they're fouled out. It's better than losing in the 3rd quarter because they're sat on the bench, right? So 3 minutes to go, which was just about the same time that when Rob's got his starters back in. And just the same time that they started to blow out Newcastle the week before, when Hamlet sat down, Newcastle couldn't score. Bailey's got his 3rd foul. Sloan's on 2 fouls, I think.
So what happened was he takes Sloan and Onwas out. They were both on 2 fouls, and Bailey comes in, and then during this stretch, he picks up his 3rd foul, and then he has to bring Sloan back in.
Yeah, he brought Sloan back in eventually, but even then, not straight away, because at one point at the time that run started, there was a lineup of Jimenez, Burns, Malcolm.
I think Baldwin was on, was he?
Baldwin and Tappy, right? Something like that, right? And that lineup is just, I might be wrong, so I've got it slightly wrong. I might have over exaggerated it because Sloan comes back a minute and a half, but the damage is done.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it was a 10-point game when Sloan comes back.
Yeah.
And I was, and you get to watching these games, and you know, it's a curse, I think, but I get little alerts in my brain when I'm looking at lineups and looking at things and knowing the kind of the type of game, the time of game, the pattern of players. It's probably all because of the amount of this rubbish that we watch, you know.
Yeah.
We see it. So I get a little, and before that even happened, I've got an alert going on saying this is the time you've competed with Leicester toe to toe in their own gym. They've won 19 home games in a row. You've got 3 minutes to go. You've got to close it out now. And if a guy picks up a third foul at that point, so what? You know, but you've got to keep going at them. And then you've got to maybe get them in foul trouble. And I thought that, you know, it's a thing, you know, if you have all those players and you want to protect people in foul trouble, there are certain venues you can't do it. Leicester is absolutely one of them. The only way you ever win at Leicester is if you're clawing at them the whole game. The whole game. So, you know, that basically knocked the end of the first half knocked the wind out of Leicester, out of Caledonia's sails. Obviously, Whelan is playing like the MVP candidate that he was last year. Jackson hadn't made much of a shot, but he's always going to make shots when it matters. Thornton's looking more comfortable, to be fair. Well, he did in this game, I thought. And Mackenzie is there, and Menzies is contributing. But basically, it's their starting lineup. It's always that time. Your starters come out, your bench comes in, your starters come back in. That 4 minutes, that's when your depth matters. Right? Depth shouldn't matter at the beginning of the third quarter because the starters are playing each other.
Yeah.
Depth matters minutes 15 to 20 in the half, right? And then minutes 15 to 20 in the half, 2 games in a row, Leicester have absolutely blown out teams. And then they come out and they make a couple of shots in the third quarter. And obviously at this point, Bailey's head's gone. Sloan is there, but he's not really there. And in their defense wasn't able to handle Leicester, and Leicester were getting payback, basically.
Yeah.
Basically.
So Leicester scored the last 14 points of the first half, the first 5 of the second half for a 19-0 run to lead 56-35. And then after that run was broken by Bailey making 2 free throws. He commits his 4th foul, and as you say, a technical on his way out. Wait till you get to the bench to pick the technical up, then it goes on the coach. And that was his evening done. And then
love to see a player argue that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. My 2 feet were on the side. It should be on the court. I remember a game when I'm sorry, I'm going back, and I know this will be the drinking game again. I remember a game when Paul Gores absolutely flipped for us, and Neil Wilkinson was reffing, and he got called for a technical after not being fouled under the basket at one end. And by the time he'd walked back off the court at the other end, he'd got 2 more. And the second one of which was the first one of which was his 5th foul. So the second one of which went on the coach.
Yeah.
And I think there was one more more word, and the coach and Fab would have been thrown out. And I'm looking at thinking, we've only got 8 players, you know, I can't lose 2 of them because he can't shut his mouth. We had him, and he hadn't been formally disqualified. I think it was before the 2 text rules, so it wasn't a formal disqualification. He was out of the game. And Neil came across and said, you know, one more technical and Fab's gone, don't you? Which point Fab overheard, and he got the team manager to escort him all the way out the gym and get him in the locker room. I'm not fouling out because of him. It was quite an important game. So yeah, it'd be really interesting that, you know, the coach. That's a good way of losing your job, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not fouled out. Fab will coach out instead.
So that was basically the game. Whelan, Jackson, Thornton, Adekoya all hit threes. Leicester just kept on building the lead. Whelan top scored with 25 points, 8 of 10 shooting, 5 of 5 from behind the arc, 10 rebounds, 3 assists and 3 steals.
He is a real example for British players. You know, he did all right in Lev Gould in Spain. He was solid. You know, he wasn't a superstar there. It's a Spanish second division, but he went out there, he played. You know, his numbers are okay. He has come back to this country, and he has absolutely developed his game and his mentality. More importantly, he's shooting the best part of 50% from 3. Every time he is open, you think he's making it. He's basically come back to this country in the BBL and demonstrated himself to be one of our best 8 players for the GB national team. No, so with a real argument to be on the court either at the beginning or the end. And the opportunity is there, and it's not, if you play well at if you play well at this standard, you will get noticed. Now, he's just an absolute, he's a success story for Leicester, obviously, and part of his success is due to the environment that he's in, no question. But he's also a success story for the league. Because he's come back and he's just like a lot of other kids. He did his junior stuff. I think he went to America, but might have came back, went off to Spain, and has come back and is literally is outplaying, relatively high level American players every week. And so it can be done. And when British players say, "Well, look, why I need to play? I need the chance to play." You got to earn the chance to play. You got to say, "Am I as good as him? Am I going to be as good as him?" LVC is another one. LVC has stepped up to the point now whereby you would think he was an input point guard.
Yeah.
And we haven't, and partly because of Brexit, we haven't had that many. It's rare. We haven't had, generally, if somebody gets to that level, they're not playing in this country anymore.
Yeah.
Prior to Brexit. So we didn't really see them. But now, because of Brexit, there's every opportunity for them in this country to make something of themselves. And they're only going to get out of this country if they're playing it. When I say out of this country, I don't mean that disparaging. I mean, get paid 3 times as much somewhere else if they're playing at a level which is above the standard of our league. And that is where Patrick Whelan is at the moment. He is a top 10 player in our league, top 5 player in our league, without any of the fanfare of anybody else for all the stuff that's gone on. So it's nice, it's nice to see that type of thing happening, and that should be he should be a marker for everybody else. It's not about being the next Obi Soko or the next Miles Hessen. You concentrate on being the next Patrick Whelan. And then you might get to be the next Miles Hessen. Yeah. Sorry, I have to say that.
No, that's Thornton was 16, 11 with 11 points, 5 assists. They had 7 guys scoring 9 points or more, shot 57% from the floor and 8 of 9 from the 3-point range, 24 of 29 from free throws, and had 30 assists.
Well, it was a procession. I think there is a slightly bigger point to it, and I'm looking forward to London going in there. I mean, that's going to be really interesting when London go in there, because you have to have a mindset. It's not about making players to beat Leicester. That in their gym, you have to have a mindset to beat them, and you have to use the phrase. You have to enjoy the challenge. You have to take on the atmosphere. Not necessarily the external atmosphere, but the mentality that the Leicester players have in that gym. They practice there, they shoot there every day. You have to be in that game from the moment on. You have to be not taking a backward step. And if you don't, they will blow you out. Now, being part of those games where they've blown us out, now being part of those games where we took on the challenge. But there's a reason that they don't lose to many teams there. That's because it's only generally the coaches who've been around a while who get that. PJ in particular. PJ knows that when you go to Leicester, you've got to be in the back and you see it. So he doesn't always win there. He hasn't,
he hasn't won for a while there.
He hasn't won for a while, but he's been at Plymouth. When he was at Worcester, they were always in a game at Leicester. They were always in the game. So, and nobody wins there. Nobody's won there for a while. And you can't just walk in there and just think it's another game and think that this is how it's going to be.
I think the last sort of meaningful win, if you like, was Bristol beat them in the league in March when Crandall got a hand injury and they blew them out by about 25. The other defeats in between were cup games, one of which was the one that didn't matter, between where neither Leicester or London, it mattered whether they won, and then Bristol beat them in a cup game at the start of last season as well, I think.
Yeah, just to continue the theme of Bristol were an in-your-face team last
year. Yeah.
They were a physical in-your-face team. And I remember that game because I remember thinking, watching it back, thinking, how the heck did it go from, how the heck did that end up that score after the third quarter? But because they wore them down, Crandall got hurt, but they were an in-your-face team. They were part of the battle the whole time. And you're not going to, you run a few, cheap, good-looking screen and rolls, and your guard goes off and gets 20. That's not going to get it done. You got to scrap for every possession there, and no one's doing that well. so far. They haven't really been challenged at home this season. Maybe Cheshire took them relatively close early on.
Cheshire gave them a decent game. They've only played a few home games. Oh no, they're up to 5 now home games.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. But that sort of London thing. When London get in there, it's going to be really interesting.
27th of December, I think it is. It's somewhere in between Christmas and New Year.
Right.
Burns
Yeah,
had.
I've got a family party that night. Great.
There you go. Burns, it might be.
Listen to this.
Yeah, it is 27th. It is 27th. I'm sure of it. Burns with 12 points, 5 of 19 shooting. Malcolm with 12, 5 of 8 shooting. Sloan with 10, 3 of 13 shooting. Burns and 7 assists as well. Burns and Sloan 8 of 32. Rest of the team 17 of 40.
Yeah, 19 shots coming off the bench in not many more minutes. When you're a new player, there's a day, he talked about constantly balancing stuff, and for all we look at, Caledonia's team and how good they look, they're still, they're 5 and 6 after this game, and they've brought in a guy again who's potentially, he wanted to get Sloan off the ball, but I'm not necessarily sure he wanted to get Sloan off the ball just so what's his name could shoot it 20 times, which is why obviously he's been starting Jimenez instead, to try and keep that balance. But by starting Jimenez, and basically what you're saying to Burns is you'll be a scorer, and that gives him a green light, which works when he shoots 7 of 15 from 3. But ultimately, if you're going to play that game, then he's going to shoot you into games and he's going to shoot you out of games. And he's not, I don't think, necessarily good enough to be shooting you into a vast majority more than he's shooting you out of. So the numbers, maybe 50-50, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe he'll go off on another couple of teams and maybe everybody will take to that kind of rule for him. But you have to be very careful because the other guys, if he's shooting 19 times, some of the other guys aren't shooting it, you see. So you've got to be careful with the dynamics of your team. It's the thing about having a new team.
Yeah. Let's move to today's games then. Plymouth City Patriots 90, Surrey Scorchers 83. Slow start from the Patriots. They were 15-8 down, but Brandon had 5 and an 11-0 run to lead 19-15. It kind of stayed like that, really. It was a sort of 4 to 8 point game throughout, really.
Say that again, Dan, sorry.
It kind of stayed like that. It didn't really get away.
No, it was, it was the first game on. Obviously, there's no other games on, so I tried to watch it. And I'll try to think back to it because I've watched a lot today. What stuck out in my mind about this game, they started Johnson. Sorry, did. Which I thought was Lloyd's attempt to shake him up.
Yeah.
Shake him.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I was a bit slow on that. Yeah.
As I was. Yeah. Never mind, and tush, I'm here all week. To shake him up. So he started Johnson. Kind of moved his guards around a little bit, brought Lawrence in at times. I'm a bit worried for Lawrence. He's every time he's clearly ultra talented. He doesn't look in the best of shape. He hasn't played for a while, obviously. I think he's carrying a little bit of weight, which he needs to get off before. The reason I'm worried for him is that when he's come back too early previously, or he's come back, he's got hurt again. If he is healthy, he's a Rolls Royce guard in this league. An absolute Rolls Royce. And he hasn't been. But if you went back to the amount of time he's been in this league, which is the best part of 3 or 4 years, he didn't even play that much for London City Royals when he was with them.
No.
He's probably not won more than probably 15 games in his own BBL career. He's been here for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And he's a game-changing player. If he's able to stay on the court, and hopefully in February he'll be on the court, and my worries will be unfounded.
Yeah.
He just looks. It's going to be tougher now. They've got Quincy Taylor, and now they've got Jefferson and Lawrence, and again that means, as I say, Bazumbu gets kind of pushed down a bit, because also Wang doesn't get as much ball handling opportunity, so it changes the scope of their team all over again, which is not a problem that Plymouth have, because Plymouth is just the same.
Yeah.
Throw the ball into, they're going to do what they do, and LVC is going to keep knocking down shots, which was about the only thing I noticed in the first half.
So let's go right to the end then, because they managed to get up 10 early in the fourth quarter, 72-62. Scorchers then had a 9-2 run to make it 74-71.
Yeah, Johnson was good in this game, actually. He
Yeah,
made all
yeah.
the shots he missed on Friday.
Yeah,
And then Jack Domi started playing harder as well, and he made some shots too.
Yeah. And so then Lawrence hits a 3 with 2:50 to go, 74-76. Brandon with an offensive rebound putback. That was a big score, that with 2:20 to go. It just kept them 2 shots in front.
Yeah, a long way, just playing hard, making plays when it matters.
Yeah.
Playing hard, make plays when it matters. He plays hard.
He does. Carey late shot clock missed a 3. Williams with a mid range, and that's why that previous one really matters, because now you're up 6 with 1:42
He got a
to
lucky
go.
down.
Yeah, and then Jefferson hits a 3 at the top of the key. 1:23 to go. 80 to.
Well, this is the kind of
77.
balance that when I talk about players, right, and coaches and what decisions you have to make. This is the balance that Lloyd's got at the moment, because he had Carey in all the way up to that point, playing the 3 next to Taylor and Lawrence, right? And he's got Carey in for defense. He's long, he gets his hands involved, he attacks, but he hasn't really made a shot this year. I think the guy says he's shooting about 14% from 3. So as a coach, you're thinking, well, I've got this guy Jefferson, he can score, on the bench. But I've also got Carey who can, get me a steal, get out in transition, make a play, get an offensive rebound. Offense, defense, where do you go? It's an absolute nightmare because there's no right answer.
No.
So you can balance it up. So by the time he went with Jefferson, and in my view, always on the road, you kind of go with offense, or you try and be as clever as you can to get as much offense in as you can.
Yeah.
Because you have to score on the road to keep the crowd down, to kind of sow uncertainty in the mind of the opposition. But I thought I think it went a little bit late with them. And so, as you say, so it was a 6-point game. That came off a couple of stops. Carey missed a couple of threes. He has to bring him in. Then Jefferson steps up, knocks down a shot the first time he catches the ball. 3-point game.
Hassan then with a score off a nice assist from Dusha down the lane. 82-77, 109 to go. And then Hassan runs back, challenges Johnson on a dunk. Might have fouled him. Might have fouled him.
I'll tell you, the 2 reasons I know that he fouled him. 1, I watched the replay. But 2, they come back on the court. The camera shows Johnson looking at Hassan at the top of the key, saying, that was like a rookie, saying, that was a foul. And you see Rashad, like a veteran, go,
yeah.
As he won't say no. He was like, well, they didn't call it,
But before that, Hassan ran the fast break and scored. So with 59.7 seconds to go, it's 84-77. And there's a timeout.
That was the game. That's the game, and that does matter. Those calls do matter. That was a foul. I've seen that. There was a game. I mean, here's the thing, right? This is kind of frustrates me a little bit, right? There was a foul called on Wes in the Leicester game, right? Where he got the cleanest block. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah.
On the base. Yeah. Right. But he went across there and he absolutely, it was, you can't call that, right? He got there, he got above the ball. He came from the side. He was above the defensive player. So he wasn't kind of submarining him or anything like that. Right. And the refs called a block. I remember thinking at the time, their calls that called a blocking for foul. And I remember at the time thinking those are calls that really frustrate me, right? Because it's a great play, great defensive play, great hustle, and the player looks at it and thinks, well, what? You don't know what you're doing. You can't call, you're not letting me play defense, right? You then, and the key is where the defended player is in comparison with the offensive player, primarily their verticality, right? Johnson in that call, Johnson was a foot above the rim, right? Gravity tells you Hassan went straight up, right? But Johnson lost control of the ball. Now, and the ball went forwards. Now, either Hassan has got the tiniest fingertip on the ball and then, whack Johnson's arm, which would still be a foul, I think, right? Or he's fouled him. Because if he's going to block that ball straight up from that height, it's got to be going back. Straight going back at Johnson. You got to be basically pinning it, right? And he didn't. And, that call is a 4-point swing. That call basically decided the game. It's unfortunate, and the refs missed it, and refs do miss calls, and no one's trying to say, you know, that it's unfortunate that it happened. You know, I'd say it happened in Surrey's favourite Newcastle when we ran over Donovan Johnson. You know, so caught at the end of games. But the inconsistency of that frustrates me. That Onwas can be called for that foul, and yet Hassan is not called for that foul when the offensive player was clearly the aggressor making the play. And so that's a 7-point game, and basically that is the game.
From then on in, Surrey kept scoring, but Plymouth kept making free throws, so they couldn't get back.
And there was other one. I mean, Lloyd was quite rightly upset about it as well. He got called for a lane violation with about 30 seconds to go.
That was a lane violation, though.
It was a lane violation, but it wasn't a lane violation because Bell was in even before the shooter.
Oh, I didn't notice Bell going in.
Well, what happened was the shooter went in early.
Yeah.
Bell was already in the paint before he even got rid of the ball.
I missed that bit.
Well, Lloyd didn't, because Lloyd's talking about it even at the end when he's talking to the refs, and he's saying, well, he was in early. You can see what he's saying. So basically the baseline ref ignored the guy who was across the line, and the foul line ref got it absolutely right in calling him for the foul. But it wouldn't have changed the result of the game.
No, it was still a 5-point game. So even if they scored, they're
yeah.
still a shot behind with 19 seconds to go, less than that. So Hassan, 18 points and 6 rebounds. Brandon, 16.7 rebounds, 5 assists. Bell, 15.6 rebounds. Williams didn't shoot the ball very well, but had 11 points and 12 assists. They were 55% shooting as a team and 8 of 17 from 3. You mentioned Johnson, 8 of 9 shooting tonight for 17 points. Jefferson, or this afternoon, Jefferson was 17. Taylor, 11 points, 11 assists, and Martin, 11 as well.
Well, why did they scored 60 on Friday night, they scored 80 tonight? Why? Because Johnson and Jack Domi finished at the rim.
Yeah.
Interior scoring ultimately is what gets you to be in games. You don't have interior scoring in this league at this point in time. You cannot win. So those guys have to step up and play like that every week.
So let's go to Glasgow, where Caledonia Gladiators beat the Newcastle Eagles 81-77. You know everybody's waiting for this. They're probably just skipping through.
You also know that approximately halfway through the end of the third quarter, this was going to be a very long summary.
Yeah.
This was going to be an absolute breakdown of it, of a game. Yeah. We've gone for 35 minutes on this. It's now going to be 3.
Yeah. Well, I'd be impressed.
So
French into the starting lineup for Newcastle. Coming back, we talked about that. You did say you thought he'd be back in the starting lineup this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they're still the same. They've still got too many players. He's got 9. He's got 9 meaningful PBL players who will need to play, and that's one too many in relation to their expectations. And I think, Cohen, I think that the balance with Cohen and Hamlet and then Kyle Johnson coming off the bench is the best one for them. There's a bit of duplication with Kyle Johnson and Ben Mockford because they're kind of similar size, and none of them are quite big enough to guard the 3. And we saw that with Bailey in this game. And then they've got a bit of duplication at the power forward spot with Donovan Johnson and Justin Everett. You're quite happy with the duplication at the centre spot with French and Defoe because everybody's playing with 2 centres, so that's not a problem. You can through them.
Not really much in this first half. Was the Eagles led by 5, Gladiators led by 7, but most of the first half was the basket or so either way.
Yeah, and they came out. I thought to be fair, the Eagles came out with clearly a plan to impact Sloan. The first possession, Cohen is bodying Jimenez up the court. So I thought they had good physical intent in relation to what they're doing. They looked ready to play. And they kept Sloan out of it. But what that meant is because to do that to start with, Kennedy was guarding Sloan, so they cross-matched. That meant that Bailey had a small on him, either Hamlet or Cohen at some point. And they didn't seem to, and given that Bailey came out and shot the first 4 shots at Leicester, they didn't really seem to have a plan on how to deal with him when he backed people down. And he scored 3 times in the post. And I think probably looking back, you'd be better off putting the size on Bailey and putting Everett on Bailey, and putting your cross match on Onwas, because Bailey is more likely to be attacking at that point in the game than Onwas is, So he scored early, but Newcastle did a good job of keeping Caledonia out of their normal stuff. And I thought French was impactful in that, to be honest. He only played 13 minutes in this game, primarily because of sharing minutes with Defoe, who was excellent. But his defense, actually, I thought made noticeable difference early on. Just his size, just his width, and being there. And that isn't a lot. It's not a high bar to improve, but it's always an improvement on what they've had, considerable improvement. So I see positive signs going forwards with him. But yeah, I mean, the game kind of ebbed and flowed.
Let's move it on then, because Eagles scored 7 in a row around halftime to 36-44. Cohen got his 4th foul with 4:11 to go in the 3rd quarter, but then 30 seconds later, Fraser did the same for Caledonia.
What I will say is, just before you move it on,
yeah.
Darius was excellent in the first half of this. Darius, he didn't settle for his jump shot. He got to the rim. He got fouled. He played with an intent. He just, it's kind of slightly concerning when, he outscores your 3 American forwards by himself. Which happened in this game. And I thought, because Newcastle didn't really get much in the open court, they don't get any fast break points, or very few fast break points, very few easy points. His scoring in the half court was critical. And also that Sloan was in a very kind of rookie kind of game. He was a bit not disinterested, but he wasn't connected to the game from what I could see. And because Newcastle were getting some decent looks offensively, that Caledonia didn't get out and run. So yeah, so the 4th foul on Cohen, which was a bit of a tough call, I thought. He certainly thought it was, but didn't have a great angle on the TV. The 4th foul on Cohen impacted the game substantially, because you then end up with Newcastle's lineups, and again, it's all about who plays when. Because you've got suddenly Kyle Johnson's averaged 20 a game. He came off the bench in this game, didn't come on to play in the 4th quarter, so he only ended up with 12 minutes or 13 minutes in the game, which you were looking at and you'd probably think you'd expect a little bit more than that. But then Ben Mockford played 23 because he got going, made a couple of plays, so coach ran with him. But the problem that they had was when Cohen went out, then Hamlet becomes the orchestrator, and then you've got to find some scoring from somewhere. And they got a little bit from Mockford and Defoe running the pin downs and Darius on the curls and finished the rim. They got a little bit from Donovan Johnson with the threes, and Kyle Johnson got a couple of sneaky baskets as well. But it didn't feel sustainable to me. And what happened was Newcastle got up 10 kind of halfway.
Yeah. So Johnson had 6 points. They scored 11 of the first 13 points to lead 61-71 early in the 4th quarter. And then Caledonia scored the next 15 points.
Well, they did. And this is what I talk about. It's not about them, the fact that they scored. It's the fact that Newcastle couldn't score. You've got to score on the road. You've got to keep scoring, because the team is going to put a run on. And they didn't score. And I thought Mark got bitten by something which kind of, again, it can happen with rookie BBL coaches, which is that he waited for it to go a little bit too far before he looked to get Cohen back in the game. Now, Cohen they got to a 5-point, he called a timeout, didn't bring him back in when they got tied. Then they got the next 5, and then he sat him down with about 4 minutes to go. I sat on the bench to come in. But the risk with that, which was one which came out, was there was no stoppage for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Game played and played and played and played. So he actually never got in the game until there was a minute to go. And I thought he was Newcastle's most important player in this game, most impactful player. Beyond that, outside of Darius, because he freed up everything else. He ran some screen and roll, he ran some pick and pops. He got Johnson some threes. Got to the rim a couple of times when they weren't respecting his quickness. And he freed up Hamlet, and Hamlet has to score for them. So we end up with an end game whereby the guy who needs to be on the court isn't on the court because he waited too long, so you lose those minutes. And Newcastle couldn't score, and so they went in the drought. And the drought killed them eventually. Darius made a tough turnaround jump shot out of nothing.
76-73, 2:51 to go.
Yeah, which was just a shot he pulled out of his backside. There wasn't anything particularly helpful or created there. And then I think they made
Neither team scored. Neither team scored for the next 2 minutes.
And the other thing is, Hamlet is at this point, Jamie Hamlet's tired. He's played most of the 4th quarter because there's not been a rotation because Cohen's been in foul trouble. Ben Mockford is tired, so Ben Mockford probably played too many minutes. But then again, no one could come out for 3 minutes. So my mindset is always, you got to get the guys you want to finish the game. You get them in with 6 minutes to go, and you get them in And if you have to call a timeout to get them in, you get them in. And if you have to call a second timeout to get them in, you get them in, because you're going to go down with the guys that you want in the court. And he wanted Cohen on the court for 3 minutes and he couldn't get in, you know? And so, you know, that can happen in basketball. But by leaving it so late, you know, Cohen finishes the game with 4 fouls, but he's played like 6 minutes in the second half and they lose by a point.
Yeah.
So it's small margins, you know, it's small margins, because that might not have made a difference, but it certainly potentially could have. In the meantime, the little things at the end won the game. Foul shots won the game for Caledonia. Hamlet missed 1, Burns made 2.
Fraser's block as well with 15 seconds to go on
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
It was a block, but Kennedy kind of, I don't know. Kennedy's really disappointed me the last 2 games. You know, he's starting at the wing. He had like 5 points in this game. He turned down open shots again. His energy level is not what it was at the beginning of the season. His closeout, you know, just the way that he's to be a wing in the BBL, the way it is at the moment, you have to be full. You have to be full of energy. You have to be aggressive in what you do, because it's a scoring position. And you know, I thought Newcastle lost that because with you know, Mockford and Kennedy, they're getting nothing on the offensive boards from the wing spot. For instance, Onwas or Bailey or Isa Brandon. You just mentioned Isa Brandon, you know, getting cheap offensive rebounds, cheap putbacks. They're getting nothing of that. And you know, I think Kennedy is probably best utilized as a 4 at the top of the key, as a kind of a secondary playmaker, because he's clearly not wanting to step up and score the ball. He played 31 minutes in this game. Bailey, his counterpart, had 28 points, 23 shots. You know, Kennedy had 5 shots. And the play that he made at the end, I thought, was indicative of that, because it was like, well, there was nothing else, nowhere else for us to go. He kind of thought, I need to make a play, but he didn't really know what kind of play he was making. It was kind of from the wing. It was to his left. It was into a double team. And it you know, I don't know, he was saying it was foul, but I couldn't see. It was the other side, but if it had been a foul, it would have been a bailout call, you know? I don't think they can continue that way. They've got a hole at the wing, whichever way they look, because they're not either getting enough scoring out of Jamel Kennedy, or enough ability to rebound and defense and stuff out of Mockford or Kyle Johnson. You know, if those are the guys playing the 3.
The problem is they're all British.
They're all British, and obviously they've got this duplication of two American 4s. Everett, who didn't score in this game, actually was plus 11. Johnson, who made some shots, but was minus 15. You know, so again, coach has got a decision as to which one he plays, and they're not good decisions to make, because they're both giving you something but taking something away.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's easier if you don't have that decision. So they've got a slightly imbalanced roster at the minute. So we talked a lot about Newcastle there, but that's because that was their only game. We already talked about Caledonia on Friday. I thought it was a game Newcastle should have won, because I don't think Caledonia were up for that game. I think they're still working through some issues as well. I think Sloan was, I would say rookie wall might be a little bit early, but he just didn't seem engaged with that game at all. Eagles did a good job of keeping him out of transition. Bailey obviously went off. Bailey had 28, and Kieran said at one point, you know, they haven't got a guy who can guard him. And you know, at some point in time, somebody's got to step up and take that challenge. The best they could do was probably Donovan Johnson, but someone takes a challenge, or alternatively, you make them throw the ball somewhere else. And Jeremiah Bayer is a really interesting one at the moment, because, as I say, I noticed on the stat sheet he was a captain, which is a rookie, which is rare. You know, he could easily be Ali Fraser or Johnny Bunyan, but it's him. So Gareth obviously sees something in him. Probably why Gareth wasn't that upset with him on Friday night. It was a learning experience for him. He's come out in a team which is guard heavy, who are shooting shot, and he's come out in the last 2 games or 3 games putting up 20 plus shots, confident in his ability. And frankly, he's playing like he gives a damn. It doesn't necessarily mean he's smart in he's doing it, because at times he is and at times he isn't. But he's becoming their heartbeat. And to get to that point at this part of the season, when you've had ball dominant guards, and you know, that's pretty impressive. So he's one to look out for. See which way he goes. You know, they're a tough team to beat at home, because they do play well at home. But they didn't play well tonight. Didn't play particularly well tonight. And I thought Newcastle's game plan was pretty good. The defense was pretty good, but I hope they blew it in the fourth quarter. But they had the wrong people on court at the long in the fourth quarter. And the only reason you've got the wrong people on court is because you've got so many of them to choose from. And you've got so many competing thoughts in your mind about who you need, about who's not playing, who is playing. And so it's tough. They would benefit from an injury, Newcastle, but they won't get one. But there you go.
So just to finish the game off, 9 seconds to go. Burns makes 2 free throws. You just mentioned 78-74. Defoe makes a 3-point shot on a good play. Probably took them a little longer than they would have liked.
Just on this one, just a rant from me, because Darius needs to stop shooting 20-footers and start shooting 23-footers.
Yeah,
fed up with it. 15-footers fine, right? But he can shoot. He doesn't shoot them. He can space the court and he can shoot. And he made one at Plymouth at the end of the third quarter in the cup game down there. He's probably shot 2 all season. I don't understand why he's continuing, to be allowed to shoot 20-footers when if he takes 2 steps back, he gets an extra point. And you get more spacing. So he knocked it down like a shooter.
Yeah, he did.
He looked it down in rhythm, stepping into it, knocking the shot down. So he thought, maybe there's something in this game. And then
78-77 that. Timeout, advanceable, almost a 5-second violation. They only just got it in time, but Sloan got it.
Yeah, that, but I did after, obviously with my entirely rose tinted and biased specs on, I actually went back and put a stopwatch on it.
Oh, did you?
About 4.4, it was fine.
Okay, yeah. So almost a 5 seconds.
Almost 5 seconds.
And then Sloan cleverly waited for the contact and then threw up a shot, and it goes in. And it's.
I thought it was a bad call. I don't think it changed the game. I watched it back. I thought he had 2 hands on his hip. Hamlet had 2 hands on his hips. He kind of pump faked, and then he shot it. So I thought there was a definite movement after he had after the contact. Shoot it. And I don't think you get that call in the NBA or in anywhere else. I think the ref got contact. The great play by Sloan, though, because in those situations, whatever he does is this handle the ball. He had the contact and he threw it. Obviously, if it doesn't go in, it doesn't really matter. Maybe got 3 shots, but it was a great play by him. He made the shot, which kind of ended the game. But I think if I look at that back, I'm thinking, when the contact was made, he may have been in his triple threat position, but that's not a shooting motion. It's like in the NBA when they do the sweep through stuff. They say that's the sweep through, get fouled, and then go up and shoot. The refs won't give that as a shooting foul anymore, quite rightly, because you're not in your shooting motion. But it's a touch and go call, and I don't think anything particularly was missed as a result.
No. So he made
a sportsmanlike call on Kyle Johnson actually in this game, halfway through the fourth.
You know what? I watched it back because I couldn't see where the foul was, and I watched
his arm.
Yeah, I watched it back, and it took me about 7 goes to see where the foul was.
Yeah,
I was like, I can't see where the foul was, but because he's grabbed his arm, and it's theoretically transition, isn't it? He's last man. It's.
Well, I think it was. I thought it wasn't the last man. It was kind of a no play on the ball call, and I don't know if he grabbed his arm or if his arm made contact. Maybe I'm looking at it with a bit of bias. I don't know.
Well, it took me 6 goes, and then I went, "Oh, actually, it is actually." And I did see
the contact, but I think you've got to decide to be unsportsmanlike. You've got to decide that's more than inadvertent, and I'm not sure I could do that on that evidence. But so be it. And I'm not saying that because the Eagles game. That's because we talk about all the unsportsmanlike.
Yeah. There was one where Achara was thinking it was an unsportsmanlike, but I did text him.
On Everett, no, bollocks.
Text him to tell him.
So he reached for that. Was a play on the ball, and it wasn't a foul. It was a play on the ball. Yeah, he actually did steal the ball.
And he wasn't last man, so coming in from the side is fine. So Bailey with 28 points and 9 rebounds, Burns 13, Sloan, Tappe, Fraser all had 10. Defoe 8 of 12 shooting for 20 points. Hamlet with 19, the only 2 players in double figures, and I've not written down the Cheshire score as we move to that. Cheshire Phoenix 74, London Lions 89. Ocherobia back for Cheshire. Hudson was back but didn't play. Only we've discovered is out with a hand injury. Kaboza is out. Philip confirmed out for the rest of the season. Zubcic rested, presumably, or inactive. And so that meant Comagum into the starters for London. I didn't think London looked quite on it in the first few minutes, but I didn't think Cheshire took advantage of it, and then when London got on it, it went 11-2, and they were up 10.
Well, firstly, they're starting the kid in the starting lineup, who hasn't been in the rotation, so suddenly he's in the starting lineup. That's going to change things a little bit. Secondly, they're playing against a 4-out team, a 5-out team, and Will Neighbours standing out there shooting shots, so that's an adjustment for them as well. Interestingly, obviously, we know Oney's out, but Oney's British, so they signed Taylor. We don't know if they're going to be playing Taylor and BBL or not. We probably assume that they're not. I was thinking maybe they might. I don't know what the rules are. The rules up until last year, which is the last I was involved, was that you couldn't register you couldn't register 6 and play 5. You had to register and deregister.
Yeah.
You could only have 5 registered at any one point.
And there was a limit to how many times you could.
There was 9, I think. And I think the closest at the minute on Newcastle have used 8. But there was 9. I don't know if it's still in place. I do know that London were trying to get it removed, but that was 18 months ago. So I don't know if that's changed. And the logic of it was, well, look, if we can sign 6 Americans and one's injured, why can't we play the other one? Which kind of I rather supported, actually. It was, there's a risk that it kind of makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. It kind of accentuates the differences between the rich because you can carry extra players in their squad. My kind of thought was, well, they're rich enough already. It doesn't really make a difference. We may as well give them, if we are going to be behind this European escapade, we may as well give them every opportunity to succeed. And similarly, if a player is, it never really struck me as making much sense, to be honest. If a player is injured for a couple of months, why you just couldn't keep him registered, why you'd have to deregister him and then register him again, which I think there might have even been extra payment for. Never made sense to me. Anyway, so I thought that maybe they'd be resting Kufos for the BBL because he was there at Cheshire, and obviously Zubcic wasn't, because the only 5 that they can change would be Best, Kufos, Ruban, Zubcic, or Kufos.
Decker, you missed that, Decker.
I missed Decker, yeah, of course, because I never think about him. Yeah, I missed Decker, sorry. So it'd have to be one of those who wasn't playing. So it might just be Taylor's just there for the Euro Cup games. I watched the first quarter of this at the halftime in the Eagles game, and I thought Cheshire played with their normal intensity. I thought they played hard. I thought they were overmatched physically, unfortunately. Larry Austin missed a couple of layups, which you wouldn't ordinarily miss just because of the size of the guys. Teague struggled a little bit inside as well. I thought they exploited Comaghan quite well. They attacked him. And Neighbour made a few threes to keep them in it. But Kufos was really good. He hasn't been really good in every BBL game this year, but he was really good. He looked healthy, and he plays at such a languid pace for a 7-footer. He catches the basketball when he's right, when he's in rhythm. There's a rhythm to what he's doing. There's a kind of a fundamental ability which kind of counteracts his lack of quickness. And he's got size, but he's got more than that. He's got touch. He's got his body control. He knows his own body. He knows his own game. And I thought he was really good. And I thought basically what happened was that London wore down Cheshire with their defense. And London's defense, I thought, was really good because once they got used to the fact that they were playing a 5-out team, they started scrambling.
Yeah.
And when they were scrambling out there, they got such size, and they got Sharma or Kufos in the middle, that the lanes are very, very difficult. Cheshire needed to find the right guy with the ball in the right place on multiple rotations to get the opportunity of making a shot.
There was a play, and I think it was late in the second quarter, where Anderson had a long, difficult 3-point shot at the end of the shot clock that didn't hit the ring. I think it hit the backboard and came out. And London went down the other end, and then Quealy just drove to the basket and laid it in. And that was almost like a microcosm of the game in how hard it was for Cheshire to get a bad shot versus how easy it was for London to get a good shot.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, Quealy I thought was quite good in this game. Actually, really good in this game because it looks like he had a couple of times he pulled out a Decker move with the Euro step finish with his left hand. That's what he's going to be. I think he's only 21, 22. He's a real, he's got a real, obviously he's been hyped from when he was 13, but he's still young in relation to professional basketball, in relation to actually playing. And he's another one that we should be hopefully promoting through the league and promoting towards the GB team. And in this game, his defense is good and his physicality was good, but this game he actually finished in transition as well. He got a backdoor cut for a dunk as well. But they're bringing Soko off the bench. They're bringing Huban off the bench. How are you, man? How are you, man? It's so tough for Cheshire, who are basically know exactly what they are. They've got their 8-man rotation, 9 with Ulf, but Ulf, that if they need the extra big to kind of eat up some minutes. But they're all under their tip. They're an absolute microcosm of a BBL team. They're talented and play hard, but they're all undersized, probably apart from Jamel for the position. Every single one of them is undersized in comparison with the Lions. And therefore, the way that they win is if they either run them off the court, which they did last year with London. That was a different London team, obviously. Or they make a barrage of threes, which London didn't let them do, but they weren't quick enough ball movement to get around. Or London don't show up mentally. They're the 3 options. And the first 2 probably rely a little bit on the third.
Yeah.
If London don't show mentally, and at this point in time, London has shown no signs of not showing up.
No, they're just
it's
ominous right now.
It is kind of, and this was a 20-point game, and Nelson made shots.
Well, this is if you go in the American sort of thing of a trap game, this is it, isn't it? You're on the road in a small gym against a team you've already beaten twice. When you've been in Greece on Wednesday and you're going to Turkey on next Wednesday, and yet it was comfortable for them one day.
And it wasn't, as I say, but it was comfortable, but you never felt that they took the foot off the pedal either. That makes sense. I didn't think, they're kind of lounging it through this game. They played hard. They played hard. And that's what's ominous, which is why I'm kind of, as I say, I'm waiting for them going to Leicester, because I think that's the only challenge that's out there for them at this. Obviously, they have the cup semi-final in Bristol, and Bristol have played a lot of home games, and Bristol have won, and the Bristol have beaten them there. But I think they'll handle Bristol in the cup semi-final. The challenge is going into Leicester, who haven't lost a game in there for a year. That's a challenge. And seeing if they're in a position to handle it. I'm sure there will be, but seeing how it goes, that's the one game that intrigues me. But no, I think Cheshire are kind of in that kind of Plymouth kind of mental space whereby they've got their group, they like their group, they know what they are, they're going to play hard, they're going to see where let the chips fall where they may, which will probably be somewhere around 500 winning the home games and struggling a little bit on the road. And London are just looking like a team that doesn't need the 2-game head start they've got on everybody else already.
Yeah. So it basically stayed in the teens for much of the second half. Chalmer was dunking everything. It did get into the mid-20s at one stage. Nick's made some threes down the stretch to trim it. Evans with 15.6 assists. Jack with 13. Neighbour with 12 and 7. 41% field goal shooting. 11 of 28 from 3-point range and 9 of 18 from free throw. London top scorer was Soko with 12. They had 7 players score between 9 and 12 points, and all but Comagum scored. They shot 58% from the floor and had 50 bench points.
I mean, the interesting thing is, look, from a kind of overlooking perspective, Ward Hibbett's playing, Wheely's playing, Caboza, I know that would have been playing if he was healthy as the season goes on. Solowade is playing and playing very well. So that's 3 GB players. We've been told Philip's not going to play the whole season in that release, I think.
Yeah.
That's 3 GB players who are on the cusp of the GB squad in a position that we're not strong in, which is on the wing. So Ward is a guard, but Ward, Hibbett and Quealy, right? They're behind, Whelan, but, Mockford's not going to be around for long, so there's going to be spots there. Hessen's off in Japan, so he's not going to be playing on the wing. So there are spots there for people like Ward, Hibbett and Quealy to go and get. As I say, Jamel's 31, 32. So there are minutes there to be obtained. So can those players be developed in their skill set by playing with people and practicing with people like Decker and Kufos and Huban? which can benefit the national team. You know, that has to be. We need that synergy. You know, and just on that point to extend an already remarkably and ridiculously long talking shop. The new CEO's been appointed.
Indeed, yes.
Aaron Raiden from the Metaverse. I'm not sure. I think he's a real person, not an avatar. American, nice tight fitting suit. Looks like he could beat you up in a fight, but talks like an executive, which is good. And he did a what was no doubt a preordained questions in advance interview with Azania Stewart online. If you haven't seen it, go have a look at it because it's really interesting. You know, I thought talking very impressively on the face of it about you know, his areas of progress for the league, and particularly in relation to kind of the imprint of the league on society and that type of stuff. And I'm not going to repeat everything he said because it's out there, so people can go and listen to it. But obviously, talking about content and raising awareness and all of that stuff, kind of beyond the normal kind of, you know, fans' complaints about, you know, two-legged games and stuff like that. A bit far more overlooking perspective. And you know, just for those who don't know, the league's had a chief operating officer for the last 20 years, a guy called Andy Webb in Leicester, who has been exceptionally good at his job in relation to keeping, you know, the warring tribes together and keeping the league moving forward, and dealing with all sorts of selling tickets in finals. And we all talk about how, you know, this is, you know, he's, you know, really done, but he's been chief operating officer, so he's very much been kind of the hamster running on the wheel to keep it turning. And now, what I was encouraged with Aaron Raiden was that he appears to be the guy off the wheel who's going to try and look at it from the outside and make the wheel bigger, you know, and improve it so we don't have to just continue fighting to get it to the next day. Obviously, the one thing that no one's addressed yet, be it 777 or him, is venues. No one's done that yet. He talked that they're kind of hoping, I think, they'll just appear out of nowhere. And obviously Sheffield and Bristol might. Sheffield is going up there as we speak. And, you know, because you can have as much fan engagement if you want, but if you haven't got enough space to put them in the gym, it's a waste of time, to be blunt. You know, you haven't got enough, you know, seats doesn't really matter. But overall, you know, I thought it was quite intriguing and what he said. You know, there is a market there of which I know nothing in relation to kind of kids growing up now and YouTube and digital stuff and all that stuff, which he obviously does, having you know, worked for the for Zuckerberg. I had words then, but no. But he does, and obviously being you know, involved in basketball and being an American, understanding the sport, having coached the sport himself. So I'm really intrigued with where it's all going to go. I'm still scared there's going to be a bubble. The bubble might burst at any point. You know, if the checks stop being written, then the whole thing will just kind of go back to where we were, and everybody will say, well, at least we tried, or more likely there'll be a massive amount of outrage as to, oh, we should never have done this, that, or the other. But on the face of it, I thought it was quite an impressively, albeit slightly scripted interview, softball interview, but you know, you know, but you know, not slightly scripted. I'd like to see a little bit more of their on the basketball side. In relation to youth development, and more importantly, I'd like to see some evidence that, you know, GB, Basketball England, Basketball Scotland, and the BBL can work with a Venn diagram that at least touches each other's circles. You know, it doesn't have to. They don't have to be on top. It doesn't have to be a solar eclipse, but you know, we need to at least interact in some way to improve the sport. And I'm not sure we're necessarily there yet, and I'm not sure that's going to happen. But we'll see. And what do you think of the interview?
Yeah, I think you were right on that. I think you're right on that. I think it was a controlled environment, if you like. But I would expect that. I would do that if it was me. Interestingly, I don't know if you've been invited, but there is an event this week for the great and the good, I think it is, and me.
Not me.
So, and again, we've been asked if you want to send questions in advance to go. It's a sort of meeting. I think it's players and club officials and people like me, sort of thing, that have been invited to it, and some.
I'll send you a list of scripted questions.
Yeah. So
on your iPad.
But again, it's that thing about engagement, isn't it? It's that you've got here's somebody who's come in, right? And we've not known who this person was going to be until last week, and yet now he's already way out there in the face. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram, and presumably Facebook and TikTok and all of the other things that I don't do. And he's out, and as you say, in the answers that he gave in that were all the things that people like you and me want to hear, aren't they? It was all of that. So it was what I expected it to be, and actually it was probably a bit better than I expected it to be, because I didn't expect him to go into all of that, because I thought it would be focused about how do we develop the product. And so, I mean, I still don't understand, like you, I don't quite understand the whole content thing. I understand what content is. I just don't see how that translates into people turning up. But that's why I do what I do, and somebody else does what they do, because they.
My view is that you get 1,000 kids. You get 1,000 kids in Newcastle playing. That fills the gym.
Yeah.
That's it. And
I follow the logic of that.
I talk about the synergy of it all. Joining everything together.
And ultimately, what it does come down to is the success of the BBL will in part be driven by the success of the development of young players, because in some ways our ability to perform at an international level, at a European level, is only really going to be realized by having British players who can play at that level. Because you can go and get Sam Decker and Costa Koufos and Huban and whoever you like, but you still need a core of British players to be able to compete at that level. And it's the one thing that we haven't really seen a great deal of, is British players playing at the top end European competitions. I know Philip has played in Euro Cup before, but I'm trying to think if any of the other British players have played.
Eric Phillips, Eric's British, but he's American British. I mean, he didn't grow up in. He's not part of our development system.
No, therein is the thing. Is sort of like, okay, so if they do get to EuroLeague, who are the British players that are going to play? None of the current, I don't think, Lions British players have played at EuroLeague level, and I can't think of anybody currently who's British, so they're sort of like tied into that, aren't they? And then actually we don't just want London going off and doing that. We want to see the other teams in the league, the second, third and fourth best teams in the league, going into the various different levels of competition. And again, they can only be successful by virtue of having, the best British players who are able to compete at that level.
Just so people understand, it's not a question of, we can create our own football, that's why can't we create our own basketball players? It's very, very different. And it's an economic thing. It's not necessarily a development thing, right? The football clubs can pour in millions and millions of pounds to development academies, etc., because they know that these guys, that they get one right and it's paid for.
Yeah.
One player, £20 million signing, bang, you paid for it all 10 times over. Okay. It is very difficult to put that market into place in basketball. It happens occasionally in European, obviously, Real Madrid with Doncic and that type of thing, but they don't make a lot of money out of it. Now, even then, they don't make a lot. There's no transfer system as such, because the high point of the pyramid is the NBA, and the NBA is controlled by a draft. And the draft is basically somewhere that anyone is going to go. So the only way that you could effectively make money out of developing your own players would be to sign them to, say, a contract at the age of 16, which would prevent them from utilizing the options of going to college primarily, which is, still a high level option for British players, because it's a way forward in the game, and it's a way to get an education, and it's kind of glorified. And that contract having a buyout clause of a remarkable amount of money, say, oh, if he wants to go and play in the NBA in the next 6 years, then you have to pay us $2 million. Well, no player's going to sign that.
No.
No 16-year-old's going to sign that. I wouldn't sign that. If I was a agent, I'm saying, don't be so bloody stupid. Keep your options open, right? So let's say that's a kid who, for the sake of argument, has come through our academy at Newcastle, right? And has been playing from CVL from the age of 9, then he gets into the academy teams, and for whatever reason, has a growth spurt, or he's looked after, and he gets to the age of 16 or 17, and the world is his oyster. Now, we put the Eagles paid for coaches, paid for travel to games, paid for venues, and it's primarily self-funding because a lot of the kids have to pay, and most of the kids have to pay unless they're economically impacted. But there is no return that there will be in a football club.
No.
There's none, and that is the difference. So the only way that what it requires is a remarkably long-term thinking to put that into place. Right? And I say remarkably long-term because the reality is, as we know, we fight for what little bit of media attention we can get. We fight regionally for sponsorships that we can get, and we're not in a position where things are thrown at us. There's no central funding from government, no central funding from Twickenham or from Lords or anything like that to put this stuff in place. There's nothing. So then what you're asking then is clubs to put resources into something that they'll ultimately see the fans on the court will see very little, unlikely to see any benefit from. And those resources have to come from somewhere. So where they come from? Well, they come from the team.
Yeah.
And that means that therefore that propagates short-term thinking.
Yeah. There's no logical reason as a professional team in this country to run development at all. There's no
other than filling your
I suppose from that point of view, yes. But I'm talking really about developing elite level players, and you don't need your CVL.
Yeah,
is about getting kids playing for the first time, in essence.
Yeah, and pitching the sports side, hoping that maybe it has a great experience. His dad is and wants to be a sponsor. Basically widening the scope of the sport, hoping it pulls more people in, which builds so greater. Now, it's easy. I say it's easy to do, but that's something which is quite capable to do on a local level.
Yeah,
right. Doing that on a national level, is virtually impossible. No one's really ever tried it. And I'm critical of Basketball England on this, and I'm critical of GB Basketball on this, because there's been no, the people who've been involved are involved with such a peripheral and such kind of a peripatetic period of time that no one ever sees this big. We have 5-year plans, but the 5-year plans, how will we get more people playing?
Yeah,
that's it, because that's what Sport England want on these numbers. That's not the way forward. The way forward is root and branch, and the way forward is to put in place a scheme which are financial incentives which work on every level. And to a certain degree, that means trusting the professional clubs, who are the best, and some of the semi-professional ones in NBL 1, trusting them because they have the best facilities at this point. Not all of them, but some of them, and the more will. And having them come together and put a plan forward for the rest of the rest of the development of the sport, because it can't be all ground up. It can't be. You can't do it. You can run 16,000 national leagues, under 12, under 12 Northwest Regional Division 2. You can run that as a national body, but that may help your numbers, but it's not helping the sport. That can be run by local people. They need to be far more, a little bit like Aaron. And the reason I talk about this is because it's Aaron Radin and what he was talking about, which was far more macro in relation to everything he's looking at.
It was,
He needs to start that conversation with other people, both at GB Basketball and Basketball England, and they need to be looking at this on a macro level as well. And they've got good people at Basketball England. Dave Owens at Basketball England and done a lot of stuff and put a lot of time in, a lot of work into information about around the world. And otherwise, we're the hamster running on the wheel.
We've never had the macro. Let's be honest. There's never been the macro, and here is a guy talking macro. So
that's 1 out of 3. So let's see if you turn up and join in.
Yeah.
Right, ended. Sorry, that was 20 minutes of politics.
Yeah. And in danger of going to a new 2-hour record here. So I'll just run through the league table and then we'll say goodbye. London are top 9 and 2. Leicester and Bristol both 9 and 4. Plymouth 7 and 6, become the 4th team over 500. Sheffield are at 500, 7 and 7. Cheshire 7 and 8. Caledonia 6 and 6. Manchester 5 and 5. Newcastle 2 and 9. And Surrey are 1 and 11. And we will try and be a little bit shorter next Sunday because we have gone very long. I don't know how long, but we've got to be close to 2 hours. So we will try and be shorter next week. But for now, have a great week, whatever you're doing. We'll see you next Sunday night. Goodbye.